The barista's voice cracked through the morning rush. "Sir, your card's been declined." Heads turned. The man at the counter, tall, well-dressed, but clearly unsettled, patted his pockets like the wallet might magically appear. His face flushed. The line behind him grew restless, sighs filling the air. Before he could mutter a word, a soft voice broke the tension. "It's fine. I'll cover it." He turned. Standing behind him was a woman, auburn hair tucked behind her ear, wearing a faded denim jacket and tired eyes that somehow still held light. She smiled, small but certain, and slid a few bills across the counter. "Just a coffee, right?" The man blinked, speechless. "You don't have to." "I know," she interrupted, "but you look like you could use a break." He hesitated, then nodded, his voice quiet. "Thank you." She gave a polite nod and stepped aside, as if it meant nothing. But to him, it meant everything. Outside, the city hummed beneath soft drizzle. The man, Damian Hartwell, billionaire CEO of Hartwell Industries, had slipped away from his empire 3 days ago, desperate to feel something real. To live a life not built on titles or cameras. He'd left his phone, his bodyguards, and his board behind, trying to remember who he was before the world decided for him. He hadn't expected kindness. Not today. Not like that. Later that afternoon, Emma Collins, the woman from the cafe, sat in her cramped apartment above a florist shop, typing furiously. The rain outside matched her mood. Another rejection email glowed on her laptop screen. "We regret to inform you, her short story hadn't made it." Again. She sighed, shutting the lid. "Maybe I'm just not meant for this." The memory of the man from the cafe lingered in her mind, his embarrassed smile, the faint sadness in his eyes. She wondered what his story was. Maybe he was just having a bad day. Maybe he'd forgotten his wallet. Maybe, she thought, some people were just trying to hold themselves together quietly. The next morning, she walked back into that same cafe, her usual escape, only to freeze at the sight of him sitting by the window, a steaming cup of coffee waiting across from him. When he saw her, his face lit up. "I was hoping I'd see you again." She blinked, surprised. "Oh, it's you. The guy with the unlucky credit card." He laughed, and it wasn't a billionaire's laugh. It was warm, unguarded. Guilty. "I was hoping to repay the coffee." He gestured at the cup. "Sit." She hesitated for half a second before giving in. "Fine. But just for a few minutes." Those few minutes turned into hours. He introduced himself as Damian Hayes, a freelance travel photographer. A lie, but one that came easily. He'd done enough charity missions around the world to make the story sound believable. Emma told him she was a struggling writer trying to make sense of life between deadlines and heartbreaks. They laughed about terrible coffee, bad dates, and dreams that always seemed just out of reach. She liked that he listened, really listened. He liked that she didn't seem to care who he might be. When she left, he found himself watching the door long after she was gone. For the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar, peace. Days turned into a pattern. She'd arrive in the morning, laptop in hand. He'd already be there, pretending to work on his photographs. They'd talk, tease, argue about books and music. It became their unspoken routine, a rhythm that belonged only to them. But the world outside never stays quiet for long. One evening, as Damian returned to the penthouse hotel he was secretly staying in, his assistant stood waiting, arms crossed. "You can't keep doing this, Damian," she said sharply. "You've been missing board meetings for a week." "I needed time," he muttered. "Time for what? To play poor? Do you have any idea what the press would do if they saw you like this?" He ignored her and walked past, but her voice followed him. You're looking for love in places that don't exist, Damian. People don't see you, they see your last name. He paused, quiet. Maybe that's why I had to leave it behind. The next morning, Emma found him staring out the cafe window, distant. She sat across from him and said softly, "You look like someone carrying too much." He smiled faintly. "And you look like someone who notices too much." Her lips curved into a smirk. Maybe that's what writers do. Their eyes held, long enough for the air to shift between them. Something fragile, unspoken, started to form. Later that week, they walked together under one umbrella after the rain caught them off guard. She slipped, and he caught her. For a moment, their laughter faded into silence, their faces inches apart. He wanted to kiss her. He almost did. But then he pulled away, unsure if his truth would ruin everything. That night, Emma wrote something new. He looked at me like he'd been lost for years and had finally found home. Across town, Damian lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He hadn't felt like this since before his father died. Before his life became numbers and contracts. She didn't know who he was, and that was the first time in forever someone had seen him, not the billionaire, not the brand. Just the man. But secrets have a way of catching up. One afternoon, a news headline flashed on the cafe TV, "Billionaire Damian Hartwell missing from public eye for 2 weeks." The image showed his face, polished, formal, powerful. Emma didn't notice. But the camera panned across the cafe, catching a reflection of him watching from his seat. His jaw tightened. He turned off the screen before she could see. Outside, rain began to fall again. The same rain as the day she bought his coffee. The same rain that whispered, "Nothing stays hidden forever." As she gathered her things to leave, he said quietly, "Emma, if you ever found out I wasn't who I said I was, would you hate me?" She frowned, confused. "Why would you ask that?" He hesitated. "No reason. Just wondering how far honesty really goes." She smiled, unaware of the storm brewing behind his eyes. "Depends on the lie." He forced a smile, but his heart thudded with fear. Because the lie wasn't small anymore, it was the foundation of everything they'd built. And soon, it was about to shatter. Emma didn't see him at the cafe for 3 days. The space by the window felt strange without him. She told herself she wasn't worried, but her eyes kept drifting to the door every time it opened. When he finally showed up, he looked different, tired, distracted, and carrying something heavy behind his smile. "You disappeared," she said, crossing her arms. "I thought maybe you ran off with my $5 coffee investment." He chuckled softly. "I wouldn't survive without your caffeine charity." But even his laughter sounded hollow. He reached for his cup, avoiding her gaze. "You okay?" she asked. He hesitated. "Yeah, just, a lot on my mind." "You seem like someone who's always got a lot on their mind," she said gently. He smiled faintly. "You have no idea." They talked, but it wasn't the same. His focus drifted, his phone buzzed repeatedly, though she noticed he never answered it. When he left, she caught him glancing back through the glass door, like a man torn between two worlds. That night, he sat in his penthouse suite, high above the noise, the city lights flickering against the glass, and stared at his reflection. The man in the mirror looked nothing like the one she knew. He hated that she didn't know him at all. His assistant called again. "You can't keep vanishing, Damian. The board's getting nervous. People are starting to talk." "Let them," he said. "They won't stop until they find you." He exhaled sharply. "I didn't walk away to be found. I just wanted to know what it felt like to be human again." You picked the wrong woman for that experiment, she snapped. When she finds out, she'll never forgive you. He froze. She's not part of an experiment. Then tell her who you are, she said coldly. Or someone else will. He hung up. Across town, Emma sat by her desk, trying to write. Words wouldn't come. Everything she wrote felt shallow, meaningless. So she did what she always did when she was stuck, she went to the cafe. He was already there. This time, his smile reached his eyes again. Coffee? He asked, holding 2 cups. She took one, smiling. You remembered how I like it. I remember more than that, he said softly. Something about his tone made her heart stutter. What's that supposed to mean? He looked away. That I missed you more than I should have. The words caught her off guard. She didn't know what to say. Over the next few weeks, the line between friendship and something deeper blurred. They stayed out late, walking the city, laughing about everything and nothing. He showed her hidden corners of town, quiet rooftops, the small bakery that made the best croissants at midnight. She shared her favorite poems, her fears, her dreams. He told her once, "You make the world feel smaller, like I could stop running." Running from what? She asked. He didn't answer. One evening, they were sitting by the water, the sky painted gold, when she turned to him. You never talk about your family. He hesitated. There's not much to say. My father wanted me to be something I'm not. Did you? I tried, he said. But it cost me everything. There was a sadness in his voice that silenced her. She reached for his hand. Maybe you just need someone to remind you you're enough. He looked at her, his jaw tightening slightly. And maybe you're the only person who ever did. She didn't pull her hand away. They sat in silence, but it wasn't empty. It was full, of everything neither dared to admit out loud. That night, as he walked her home, she stopped outside her building. Damian. Yeah. If this, whatever we're doing, ever feels like too much, just tell me, she said quietly. I can handle the truth. I'd rather that than be lied to. His chest tightened. I know. But he didn't tell her. Not yet. The next morning, Emma woke to her phone buzzing with notifications. Her friend Mia had texted, "Isn't this your guy?" followed by a news clip. Emma clicked it, and froze. Billionaire Damian Hartwell spotted in city, missing CEO finally resurfaces after months off-grid. The photo made her stomach drop. The face was unmistakable. The same eyes. The same man who'd been sitting across from her every morning, pretending to be someone else. Her hands shook. She couldn't breathe. She replayed every word he'd ever said, every moment they'd shared, and felt her chest cave in. At that very moment, Damian was standing outside the cafe, holding her favorite coffee, rehearsing how he would tell her the truth, only to find her seat empty. She didn't show up the next day. Or the day after. He went to her apartment, but she wouldn't answer. When she finally did, her voice was cold through the door. You should go back to your world, Mr. Hartwell. He closed his eyes, the name sounding heavier than ever. Emma, please. You lied to me, she said, voice trembling. 4 weeks. You let me tell you everything about me, while you hid everything about you. I didn't mean to. Stop, she cut in. You meant to. You just didn't mean to get caught. Silence. Her voice broke then, quieter. You made me believe we were equals. He pressed his forehead against the door. I didn't fall in love with you because of what I have. I fell in love with you because for once, someone didn't look at me like a headline. She swallowed hard. And yet, you turned me into one. He stayed there, waiting for a response, but the lock clicked. She was gone. He stood in the hallway for a long time before whispering, "I only wanted to be seen." She didn't hear it. That night, Emma opened her laptop and stared at a blank document. Her fingers hovered over the keys. When she finally typed, the words came out raw and furious. "He said he wanted to be ordinary. I gave him that. And he turned it into another lie." Across the city, Damian sat in his office again, the world he'd escaped swallowing him whole. The boardroom was full, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. He couldn't focus on a single word. He'd found the one thing money couldn't buy, and lost it because he was too afraid to be honest. For the first time in years, the billionaire didn't feel powerful. He just felt alone. Days turned into weeks. Emma tried to forget him, but every corner of the city felt like him. The cafe, the smell of coffee beans, even the street musician who played the same tune he once hummed under his breath, they all pulled her back to him. Her friends told her to move on. "You can't build love on lies," Mia said. "I know," Emma whispered, "but I can't erase the truth of what I felt either." She tried writing about it, but every story turned into their story. Every character carried his eyes, his voice, his quiet sadness. It made her hate her own words. Meanwhile, Damian's life went back to headlines and meetings. The press painted him as eccentric for vanishing, but none of it mattered. He went through his days like a ghost, signing deals he didn't care about. Every time he passed a coffee shop window, his chest tightened. One night, during a charity gala, his assistant handed him a drink and whispered, "You need to get it together. The world doesn't stop because you fell for someone." He looked at her flatly. "Then the world's priorities are broken." He walked out before the speeches even began. The next day, he made a call, one that surprised his team. He ordered a foundation to fund an annual writing grant under a fake sponsor name. The condition? It would be given anonymously to a struggling writer chosen from the city's submissions. He didn't have to check to know Emma's name would appear in that list. 3 weeks later, she got the email. "Congratulations. You've been selected as this year's recipient of the Verity Grant for Emerging Writers." She read it twice, her breath catching. The grant covered her rent for 6 months and included a publishing contract with a small press. She couldn't believe it. This can't be real," she murmured. Her joy was tangled with disbelief. When she saw the letter's closing line, "For the writer who reminds the world that kindness still exists." Her hands went still. She knew that signature. Her heart raced. She wanted to be angry, but the truth hit harder, he was still watching over her. Not as a billionaire flaunting power, but as a man trying to make amends. Still, she couldn't just accept it. Not like this. She needed to see him, one last time. That evening, she went to the cafe where it all began. She didn't expect him to be there. She just needed to sit where everything once felt simple. But when she stepped in, she froze. He was there, sitting by the window, the same seat, 2 coffees waiting on the table. He looked up as if he'd felt her enter. His expression softened, cautious, like a man afraid to believe what he was seeing. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said quietly. "I almost didn't," she replied, setting her bag down. "But I got your letter." He sighed. "I didn't mean to." "To what?" "By forgiveness," she cut in. He met her eyes. "No. I just wanted to help you the way you helped me, without expecting anything back." She stared at him for a long time. His face looked more tired, more human than she remembered. "You could have told me the truth." "I was going to," he said. "Every single day, I planned to. But then you'd smile, and I'd lose the courage." You were the first person who ever saw me without the noise. And I was terrified I'd lose that the moment you found out who I was. You lost it anyway, she said, her voice breaking. He nodded slowly. I know. They sat in silence, the world moving around them. She took a deep breath. Do you even know what it's like? To feel small next to someone like you? To think someone cares, only to realize they were living an entirely different life behind your back? Yes, he said softly. Every day. That's exactly what I felt, before I met you. His voice cracked then, and it startled her. He wasn't performing, he was unraveling. You gave me something no one else could. You made me feel real again, Emma. You made me remember why I ever wanted a life outside the boardroom. She looked away, emotions clashing inside her. You can't fix everything with money. I'm not trying to, he said. If I could trade every dollar just to have coffee with you again, the real you, the real me, I would. Her throat tightened. She didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to forgive him right there, to fall back into the version of him who made her laugh, who saw her potential before anyone else did. But another part whispered not to forget. She stood abruptly. I don't know what you want from me. Nothing, he said. Just a chance to say I'm sorry. She turned to leave, but he added quietly, you once told me you'd rather be hurt by honesty than comforted by lies. I should have listened. That stopped her. For a long moment, neither moved. Then she said softly, if you really meant what you wrote in that letter, you'll let me go. Don't turn this into something I owe you. His expression fell. I wasn't trying to make you owe me. Then let it be kindness, she said, voice steady now. Like mine was. He nodded, looking down at the untouched coffee. Then I guess we're even. She walked out, her heart heavy but lighter than it had been in weeks. He didn't chase her this time. He knew he had no right to. Later that night, she sat by her window, thinking. He'd lied, yes. But he'd also given her the push she'd needed to believe in herself again. Without him, she wouldn't have written the story that got her noticed. And that realization scared her, because it meant love, even the broken kind, had changed her for the better. Meanwhile, Damian sat alone in his suite, staring at the grant confirmation email on his phone. He reread her name again and again. He told himself it was enough, that helping her, even from afar, was enough. But as the night stretched on, he realized it wasn't. He didn't just want to see her succeed. He wanted her to know that he still believed in love, because of her. He stood abruptly, grabbed his coat, and left. For once, he didn't care what the cameras or his company thought. He just knew one thing, he wasn't ready to let the story end there. He didn't sleep that night. Damian drove aimlessly through the city until the streets grew quiet. Every light reminded him of her, the soft warmth, the fleeting glow. He'd spent his whole life buying everything money could touch, but Emma had given him something money couldn't reach. And he'd lost it because of fear. The next morning, he made a decision. He cancelled his meetings, turned off his phone, and went to her book signing. It was the launch of a small anthology that featured her story, The Kindness of Strangers. She didn't know he'd arranged the grant behind the scenes, or that the event was being quietly sponsored by his foundation. He stood in the back, wearing a plain gray sweater and jeans, no suit, no entourage. Just him. She was on stage, reading an excerpt, her voice trembling but confident. Sometimes, she read, the people we meet by accident are the ones who show us who we really are. Not because they stay forever, but because they leave us changed. Her audience applauded. She smiled, that same unguarded, sincere smile that had wrecked him the first day they met. He waited until the crowd thinned before stepping forward. When she finally looked up and saw him standing there, her breath caught. For a second, she froze. Then she said softly, "You shouldn't be here." "I know," he said. "But I needed to see you." She crossed her arms, though her voice wavered. "You said you'd let me go." "I tried," he admitted. "But I can't move on pretending I'm fine. You once told me stories aren't about perfection, they're about truth. So here's mine, I'm still in love with you. Not because you helped me that day, not because you forgave me, but because you saw me before I even saw myself." She blinked rapidly, tears filling her eyes despite her effort to stay composed. "Damian." He stepped closer. "You changed me. And I don't mean the cliché way. You made me want to be someone I could actually respect. I'm not here to ask for another chance. I just needed to tell you that you mattered, that you weren't just another chapter." Her voice broke. "Then what do you want from me?" He smiled faintly. "Just a coffee." She stared at him for a long time, the air between them thick with everything unsaid. Then, without a word, she turned, grabbed 2 cups from the counter behind her, and handed one to him. "Just coffee," she whispered. He nodded, grateful. They sat at the edge of the stage, sipping in silence. After a while, she said, "Do you know why I paid for you that day?" He looked at her, curious. "You looked lonely," she said quietly. "Not in a way I could explain. It wasn't pity. It just felt like you needed a reminder that people still cared." He smiled gently. "You did remind me. Every day since." She looked down at her cup. "I don't know if I can trust you again." "I don't expect you to," he replied. "But I'll spend as long as it takes to earn it, not as a billionaire, not as a name, but as the man who fell for the woman who bought him coffee without asking for anything back." Her lips trembled. "You really think love works like that?" He chuckled softly. "I think love's a little crazy. But I'm willing to be crazy if it means finding my way back to you." The room was nearly empty now, sunlight slipping through the windows. She studied him, really studied him, and saw the difference. The arrogance was gone. What replaced it was sincerity, vulnerability, something real. "Maybe," she said, "we start over. No lies this time." His eyes softened. "You mean that?" "Yeah," she whispered. "But this time, you're buying the coffee." He laughed, a genuine, deep laugh that filled the quiet space. "Deal." They left together, walking out into the bright morning, no grand gestures or cameras. Just 2 people starting again, one step, one coffee at a time. A few months later, her novel debuted under the same title, She Paid for His Coffee. The dedication read simply, "For the man who reminded me that love isn't about what we have, it's about what we give." At the book launch, he stood in the crowd, unnoticed by most, but her eyes found him instantly. Their smiles said what words didn't need to. When the host asked her what inspired the story, she answered softly, "Kindness. The kind that starts small, like a cup of coffee, and ends up changing 2 lives forever." The audience clapped, and Damian felt something he hadn't felt in years, peace. As they stepped outside later, she leaned against him, whispering, "Do you still think you were the one searching for love?" He smiled, wrapping an arm around her. "No," he said. "I think love found me first." She laughed, tilting her head up to look at him. "Then let's not lose it again." He nodded, eyes warm. "Never again. Sometimes love begins with a simple act of kindness." If you believe love can still be real, like, comment, share and subscribe for more stories that remind you what the heart can still feel. Until next time, this is Soul Storyverse TV.